Proportion word problems are just word problems that can be solved by setting two ratios equal to each other. In other words, you're going to end up with fraction equal to fraction. The important thing is to get your fraction set up correctly. Read the problem through and look for keywords or units that you can use to help set up what I call a model. Here I've got highlighted medicine and water. So what I want to compare is medicine to water. Use whatever abbreviations you want, but I like to use the first letter of the word that I'm using. So medicine to water is what I'm going to set up, and I'm going to have two different situations. In the first situation, the amount of medicine was 5 ounces. That's going on the top. Must be mixed with 8 ounces of water. Water is my amount that goes on the bottom. Those go together in the same fraction. The next part says how many ounces of medicine. We don't know. That's going to be our variable. I'll use M for medicine. Would be mixed with 36 ounces of water. Put your 36 on the bottom, and what you have is a proportion. Fraction equal to fraction. All we have to do here is solve by cross multiplying. 8 times M is 8M. 5 times 36 is 180. One-step equation solved by dividing both sides by 8. And you can either divide out from here. You could reduce your fraction and make it a little bit smaller. You know 2 goes into both of those, so that's going to give you 90 over 4. 2 divides into those again, giving you 45 over 2, which when you divide that out again will be 22 and a half, or 22.5 ounces. So we would need 22.5 ounces of the medicine to be added to 36 ounces of water. Instead of reducing right here, you could have just gone straight to your division of 8 divided into 180, and you'll get the same answer. Reducing just makes the numbers smaller to deal with. In this example, what we are comparing is inches to miles. So the model I would set up is I for inches over M for miles. Write down my 2 fraction bars and start filling in the values I know. I know that 1 inch represents 22.5 miles. So the 1 goes on the top and the 22.5 goes on the bottom. I just have to decide where the 4.5 is going to go in the next fraction, and because it's 4.5 inches, it goes on the top because that's where the inches goes. What's being asked is how far apart are they in reality? It doesn't actually use the word miles, but they're asking for what the real distance is, which would be miles, which is going to have to go in the bottom. Cross multiply and solve this. M times 1 is M, and 22.5 times 4.5 is 101.25. And that goes with the M, which stood for miles. In this example, we're asked about chicken fingers for students. So what we're comparing is C for chicken fingers and S for students. In the first fraction, I have 48 chicken fingers that will feed the 20 students. So the bottom of that fraction is 20. This fraction asks how many chicken fingers would be needed for 30 students. So the C is my variable. I don't know how many chicken fingers, but I do know 30 students, and my S is what goes on the bottom. I could cross multiply and solve right here, but if you're not using a calculator, reducing the fractions might be a good idea to make the numbers a little smaller for you. 4 goes into both the top and the bottom, so 48 divided by 4 is 12. 20 divided by 4 is 5, equals C over 30. At this point, cross multiplying is a little bit easier for me. Also, you may decide not to cross multiply. When you have 2 fractions equal to each other, when the denominator will divide evenly into the denominator or with the numerators, you may do this instead. 5 times what gives you 30? Well, 5 times 6 is what gives me 30, so I could just multiply the top by 6 and get 72. You may do that anytime you have an even division either on the bottom or on the top. If we hadn't used that, if we had just cross multiplied, we would have 5 times C is 5C, 12 times 30 is 360, solve this one-step equation by doing the opposite of multiplying by 5, which is dividing by 5. And if you divide that out, you get 72. Now what we were asked about is chicken fingers, so this is actually 72 chicken fingers. I'm going to abbreviate CF for chicken fingers. Now you have to understand that there are equivalent ratios. All of these are the same. 2/3 is equal to 4/6. You can verify that because you know 4/6 reduces to 2/3. The other way to verify it is to check the cross product. 2 times 6 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12. Sometimes the problem could be set up differently, and we might have the whole ratio flipped upside down. Instead of 2/3, I have 3/2. Instead of 4/6, I have 6/4. But notice we still have equal cross products. 3 times 4 is 12, 2 times 6 is 12. These down here are also equivalent. This is kind of like looking sideways. 6/3, 4/2. I still have a cross product of 12. Still have a cross product of 12. This is this ratio just flipped upside down. The point of this is that sometimes you've got word problems that ask you to set up and get a multiple choice answer. You might set up your proportion accurately, but you're not going to find your answer in that particular order listed. So what you need to do is flip around your proportion until you find a proportion that matches a multiple choice answer, like this. If I were to do the problem the way I normally do, I would look at this and I'm comparing ounces to gallons. Or I could have said additive to fuel, but ounces to gallons looks pretty easy. I have 12 ounces of additive with 16 gallons of fuel. This says how many gallons of fuel will 9 ounces treat? Well, the 9 is ounces. It must go on the top. And the bottom then is my G for gallons, or X as they're using in the multiple choice. This would be my setup for solving, but it's not there. There's 12/16, but it's got X over 9. I have 9/G or 9/X, so that can't work. I need to find one down here that would be equivalent to this ratio right there. One way to check is just to check your cross products. This would be the cross product 12 times G equals 9 times 16. Well, this is 12 times 9. I need it to be 12 times G. This is 12 times 9. This is 12 times 9. The only one that is 12 times X, or G in my case, is this one right here. This proportion is equivalent to that proportion. You can see all I have to do is take my proportion and flip it upside down. So sometimes you set it up one way, but the multiple choice answers are a different setup, and you just have to recognize what is equivalent to yours.